Hello there, and welcome into another edition of the JMac podcast. I hope that you are doing well. I wanted to bring you another shorter podcast, but I thought that I would continue to deal with some of the claims that we are hearing when it comes to the statement that this election is being stolen. And I know that so many people are just watching on social media and they're only receiving information that they agree with. They're not being challenged. And so I think it's important that we look at some of these allegations and we really do a deep dive and find out if there is any truth to them. So today I want to deal with two allegations that you might be hearing. The first is, are dead people voting in 2020? I kind of talked about this a little bit in my last podcast. I will talk about it maybe again coming up, but I want to answer that question. And then also, is this company, Dominion Voting, are they connected to Nancy Pelosi and to the Clintons? And if so, what is that connection? And are there glitches across the country with these Dominion voting machines? So these are important questions. Again, I really have been anxious to see if there is any widespread fraud out there. You know that I've had a beef with this president going all the way back to 2016 when he claimed that millions of people voted illegally and that he actually won the popular vote. And of course, his staff and his administration put together an investigation to try and prove what the president believed, and they couldn't find any widespread voter fraud. And then this president said before the votes even started that fraud was happening, and then on election night, he said that fraud was happening, and by then there's no way they could have collected any evidence. So I will admit that I am somewhat skeptical here going in, but every story that is sent to me, I give it the same due diligence, and I will research it, and I will be the first screaming from the rooftops if there is widespread voter fraud. Now, I will tell you, having covered elections for the last 20 years, that voter fraud is something that happens every single year. It's something that we try to stop, that we try to mitigate. You will see charges filed this year and last presidential election and the one before that, alleging voter fraud. You'll see people go to prison for voter fraud. And so really the question is not, is there voter fraud? The question should be, is there widespread voter fraud enough to justify the president's claim that this is a stolen election? And if it is a stolen election, then by golly, we better get down and we better figure it out. But if it's not, and they really don't have evidence of a widespread voter fraud, then that puts this president and what he is doing in a very different light. And it means that he is willing to destroy the very fiber of our republic and the faith of the American people in our election process for his own personal gain and so that he can get another 4 years. So either way, we're going to have some major revelations here. On the one hand, widespread voter fraud. Oh my goodness. And all the dominoes will fall and all the Democrats will come crashing down. And they'll be caught in their own scandal. Or on the other side, President Trump, unable to prove his own statements, well, most of us will sit back and will understand his motives. While unfortunately, I'm afraid many of his supporters will go down with him and never ever believe that this election wasn't stolen. I think that's already written in the stars, if you ask me. Okay, let's ask or answer this question. Are dead people voting in 2020? I would like you to do something. I would like you to get on the Google and I would like you to search dead people voting in 2016. And what you will find is that in 2016, there were criminal investigations. There were charges filed. They were in Colorado, Philadelphia, Other places, there were incidents where somebody received both ballots for their loved one who had passed away, and their own ballot, and so they filled them both out and they sent them in. And there have been cases where individuals, enterprising young Americans, have tried to perpetuate a little bit larger voter fraud. But the reason that I bring that up, and you can go back and you can see it in 2012 as well, the reason that I bring that up is, as I said in a previous podcast, we now live in a world where suddenly everybody is an election fraud expert. And they act like the election irregularities that we're seeing right now have never happened before, and that they are a clear-cut sign of voter fraud. When the truth is, they never cared about investigating election anomalies before, especially 4 years ago, because their president won. So why would they? And so they see these anomalies, these glitches, dead people voting, as a sign of fraud, not knowing or understanding, because they just became an election expert about 72 hours ago, that these things happen every year, that when you're going to process millions and millions of ballots, that there are going to be glitches, there are going to be issues. And I'm not saying that those glitches are okay, and I'm not saying that it's okay that dead people vote. But everybody is acting, because they've never researched it before, as though these are all signs that this election was stolen. And that argument just simply does not stand, at least from my perspective as somebody who's covered elections for 20 years and been involved now in running for office and seeing kind of up close how the process works. So let's get to this idea of dead people voting. First of all, there are dead people on the voter registration rolls, and there always will be until we have a system that kicks in where, I guess, when that death certificate is printed, that somehow the voter registration systems are notified. But we will also have people on the ballot who have moved out of that district or out of the state as well, and they have failed to notify. It's a very difficult process to keep the voter registration rolls up to date. And it's something they're always trying to keep up with. So it's very likely that you will see circumstances where somebody has filled out two ballots. One for the person who has passed away in their home and themselves. And that's fraud. And they should be held accountable for it. But is that widespread voter fraud? I was watching, was it Tucker Carlson? I can't remember who I was watching. And because I go back and forth through the networks, and they had a list on the screen of 10 people who have died in the last 5 years who voted in this election. And they're acting like, oh my goodness, see, if we know about 10, then how many more could have voted? And they're treating their audience as though this is new. This has never happened before. And they're also treating their audience as though it only happens on one side of the aisle, which is false. If you just do any research, you will see that. So everyone out there who is suddenly concerned about this election, now they're like, oh my goodness, this is voter fraud. When the truth is, there's always dead people on registrations, and there will be those who try and take advantage of the system. What you need to be looking for is voter fraud in the thousands, in the tens of thousands. Dead people, not in the similar numbers that we've seen in previous elections. Those I would call voting irregularities or fraud that needs to be looked into, but not widespread voter fraud. But again, everyone who's already decided that the fraud happened views that as evidence of widespread voter fraud. And it's just not. It's just not, my friends. It's just not. When Tucker can come on the air and he can show you 10,000 of them, then we're getting somewhere. We're just getting somewhere then. All right. So I hope that helps with dead people voting. To answer my own question, are dead people voting in 2020? Yeah, they are. And they do go for both sides. And it needs to be stopped. and people need to be held accountable for it. But that's not the real question that we should be asking. The question is, was this a stolen election? You're going to need to find a lot more dead people. So keep searching. And when I see it, I will gladly come on and I'll say, yeah, that's a lot of dead people voting. That influenced an election. Until then, it's just kind of the same-o. So that's my answer to that. All right, let's get into Dominion Voting. So this is a company that them and one other company handle the majority of the contracts for voting machines in the country. They handle, between the two companies, they equal about 80% of the voting machines across the country. So there's several stories going around about Dominion Voting. And of course, everybody's freaking out and saying, look, this is it. This is the sign that we needed. This is the smoking gun. So I'm going to break these down for you one at a time. Okay, the first one is this glitch that happened where 6,000 votes were assigned for Biden, and they were actually for Trump. And everybody's like, see, this is it. And I've had this discussion in the comments with people on TikTok and on social media over and over again. Because, again, they're new election experts within the last 72 hours or the last 9 days. And they see this glitch and they're like, see? And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, here's what happened. The glitch happened. And the regular voting officials who were there on site to monitor the vote, they caught it. Not only did they catch it, but they fixed it. Not only did they fix it, but they announced it. And so I've been asking people over and over again, and I'll ask you, how is it that is fraud? Because the way fraud works, in my mind, maybe I'm completely wrong here. Maybe I have this completely backwards. But in my mind, the way fraud works is you have the glitch, it switches those votes over, and you say nothing. You don't catch it. You don't announce it. You don't reverse it. So, in my mind, this is actually a sign that they're doing a good job because they caught the glitch. And then everybody's like, oh, but this system is used in 40% of counties in that state, and it's used across the country. Well, so guess what? Michigan and other places, they said, let's make sure. And to date, there's been no other reports. Again, if we see them, then great. But glitches in voting systems, if you want to, again, do some research beyond this election year, nothing new. Do they need to be solved? Yeah, so that we can avoid these claims. But nothing new here, nothing to be seen here with the voting machines. Okay, so let's get into some of the more, I don't know if they're conspiratorial. I mean, they do, like most conspiracies, there is an element of truth here. Okay, so here's one of the claims. Dominion Voting Systems has direct ties to Democrats. They have made donations to the Democrat Party. All right, so that one is, again, there's a hint of truth there, okay? Here's what happened. In 2015, Dominion Voting donated between $25,000 and $50,000 to the Clinton Foundation. That's in 2015. No donations that I'm aware of that I can find doing any research since. And since Hillary Clinton's not involved, thank goodness she's not involved. I'm not sure what that tie is supposed to mean. I did also find that Dominion has also donated to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. And although not as much. So typically what these what companies like this will do is they'll donate to both sides. They want favorability with contracts and with legislation. So you decide what you want to do with that. They made a donation to the Clinton Foundation in 2015. Does that mean, is that evidence of widespread voter fraud? Not to me, but maybe it is to you. Okay, the next one, because there are several here. The next one, is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi connected to Dominion voting? Here again, there is a little hint of truth, but you're not going to hear that base truth as the conspiracy fire spreads around the internet. You're going to hear the story that Nancy Pelosi's aide works for Dominion voting systems. And here's the truth. Dominion voting has paid lobbyists in Washington for years to lobby for, again, favorable legislation. In doing so, they hired lobbyists, and you can see this in their financial reports. They are available online. I've seen them. They hired lobbyists to lobby both parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. One of those lobbyists used to be the chief of staff for Nancy Pelosi. So you can see how they would grab that and say, see? But there again, when you kind of know the truth, it it's kind of like a whoopee cushion. It kind of fizzles out just a little bit. I will also tell you that there is another company, ECL, I think. They handle about 43% of the nation's voting machines, and they also have donated to Republicans and Democrats. I haven't seen any glitches reported with their system. But so you can see how people who want to prey on the conspiracy people who just latch on to that will take something that has a sliver of truth. They will one-side it. They won't tell you the whole story. And then suddenly this is magically widespread voter fraud. I've shared with you what I could find. You decide for yourself if that somehow plays into the equation. For me, it's kind of a big nothing burger, okay? Just a big nothing burger. It's been interesting as I've been debating people online. In fact, I had a discussion with somebody today. And I really, when I get into conversations in the comments, you know me, if you've listened to me for long enough, I really want to engage and I want to share ideas and I want to hear their side and I want to share my side. And I do so with respect and I do so by sharing my sources. So I get on today and somebody was posting about this Justice Alito from the Supreme Court demanding that Pennsylvania set aside a certain number of ballots. And this guy posted this today, even though Justice Alito did this back on the 5th. And he said, see, look, we're winning. Hang on, MAGA supporters, Trump 2020. And I just put a little note in there. I'm all, hey, just so you know, the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania had already set aside these ballots, and they're not included in the current count. That's all I said. This guy started attacking me like you cannot believe. Where's your sources? How do you have magical information? So, having done this for 20 years and having great knowledge of how people act today, and seeing that he was already attacking me, and I've just posted a little factoid there just for his information. I commented back and I said, I'll give you my sources, but let me tell you how this is going to go. Let me make a prediction. And he says, okay. I said, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you my sources, and instead of listen to those, you're just going to turn around and attack me and my character, and it's not going to go very well. And so he's like, give me those sources. You don't know who I am. You don't know who you're messing with. And so Right off I just sent him 3 sources, 3, boom, boom, boom. Fox News source, the AP, just boom, 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 3 in a row. And I'm like, hey, do you want some more? And of course, what did this person do? Went right after my character, did a quick Google search, and it started attacking me because who am I and all this stuff and talking about his intelligence. And so I just said, hey, you kind of fulfilled my prediction. I'll give you a choice. You can engage me about anything you want, and I'll be glad to give you sources, or you can keep attacking, and I predict you're just going to keep attacking. And guess what he did? He just kept attacking. So at one point, I'm like, hey, why don't you make fun of my mother? Why don't you attack my intelligence? Maybe that will make my sources false. And so he's just going, and then finally I just said to him, I'm going to make another prediction. I said, your next comment will either be another attack or you will block me. Guess what he did? He blocked me. Oh, it's just amazing watching a group of people that have already decided. And they decided when Trump said it happened. And that was all they needed. They didn't need any other evidence. And I think I'll play this for you next time, but I have a reel of all of the conservative pundits, the Fox News, all of those back in 2016, telling the Democrats to shut up because there were questions about the validity of some of the elections. And they're just like, how dare you challenge the election? I mean, it's just the exact opposite of what they're saying now. And of course, the Democrats were doing exactly the opposite of what they're doing now. If we can't see the partisanship here, it's just remarkable. And having to wade through it and sift through it is unbelievable. The other thing going on is that people are jumping ship from Fox News, I guess, conservatives. And they're jumping from Facebook and Twitter, and they're jumping from TikTok over to these conservative-only social media, and they're jumping over to Newsmax. And it's sad to me because they're literally saying that they will only believe and only want news that favors and supports Trump 24/7. And I've been toying with people, and I put that on the comments, and I'm like, you know what? I'm so glad for you that you finally have a place where your opinions are never challenged, and President Trump will always be supported by this media organization. I'm just glad you finally have a place. I do feel bad for Fox News, though, because Fox News, they were loyal to President Trump. I mean, they went out of their way to support the guy. And what are they getting for it? They're getting slammed by him and by his diehards. And I really think they're going to take a huge hit in the ratings. And I just feel bad for those guys because they were putting in the work, man. They did everything that they could. The other thing I will tell you is that I'm saddened by how, this is going to sound terrible, but I really wanted a repudiation of President Trump. I wanted Republicans to send a message, and they didn't. They went against my wishes, and 71 million people voted for him. And so he's empowered, and those who support him, the Lindsey Grahams and those other people, they are empowered to continue the exact same way. And that is frustrating to me. In fact, a lot of people talking about President Trump running again in 2024. I was asked about that if he lost. Before the election, I was asked about that. And I said, if he loses, no way. He's going to fade away into the darkness. Well, not with the vote count he just got. I mean, he very well could be back in 2024. And I was really hoping for some peace and quiet away from Trump. I was really hoping that we could get back to where I was before Donald Trump ever came on the scene. And that is spending my days explaining why the Democrat in office is leaning too far to the left, why they might be violating the Constitution, violating states' rights, expanding the government, running up debt, whatever it is. And I haven't been in that place for a while. And it's because my side chose somebody who except for several things, I just think has been the worst thing for the party. But maybe I'm the one who's out in the cold here, because the vote count sure doesn't show that he diminished that at all. So I'm reassessing where we're at right now. At any rate, I hope that I have helped you a little bit. Please send me your comments. Do you have any questions? Is there a claim that you are seeing out there that you think leads to widespread voter fraud? Let me know. I would love to see it. I'm making it a habit. Every time one comes in, I go and I do the research. And so far, definitely voting irregularities, and definitely some fraud, and some things that absolutely have to be fixed, but nothing that rises to the claim of President Trump of a stolen election or widespread voter fraud, and nothing even close. And so, again, if you think you can get me off of that position, I'm open, because if there's widespread fraud, I want a conservative in office. I didn't vote for Joe Biden, but I didn't vote for Donald Trump either. So that's where I'm at right now. Anyway, thank you. I hope you have a wonderful day or night whenever you are listening. I hope to go back live soon. I've just been super busy raising money, supporting my family. Those of you who are not watching, you're listening on the podcast, you will also see that my wife finally got me in the salon chair, and the lumberjack beard and the long, nasty hair is finally gone. And I don't know how I feel about it, because it was COVID Jay, sequestered Jay, and I'm starting to like that guy. Anyway, thank you, and I will talk to you soon.